Irish fans will have to wait a little longer to see James Gallagher fighting on home soil after Gallagher suffered a knee injury in preparation for his main event fight with Jeremiah Labiano in Dublin next month. This bad news was first reported by MMAfighting.com. The 20-year-old from Strabanco, Tyrone, who trains in the famous SBG gym with Conor McGregor and Gunnar Nelson among others, has set the featherweight division alight since joining Bellator in 2016. James "the Strabanimal" Gallagher has gone 30 with all 3 of his wins coming by rear naked choke. After submitting Shinzo Machida, the brother of former UFC light heavyweight champion Lyoto Machida in Madison Square Garden, Gallagher has become a budding star for Bellator. Due to the youngster's attitude and potential, many comparisons between Gallagher and UFC lightweight champion Conor McGregor have been made by the fans and media, which has made Gallagher one of Bellator's most recognizable names. This notoriety has ultimately led to the young Irishman getting a chance to headline in Dublin this November, but this injury has delayed his rise for the time being. Gallagher on social media Thursday stated that he has suffered an injury to his PCL and LCL in his knee and would be out for the remainder of the year. He has assured fans, "We would return next year and carry on where he started with a Jimmy Show." His longtime rival AJ McKee, who has engaged in a Twitter war with Gallagher after his last fight, will now headline Bellator 187 in the 3 Arena in Dublin on November 10 against Gallagher's SBG teammate Brian Moore. Moore will be making his 3rd appearance for Bellator in this featherweight clash. Former Bellator welterweight champion Andrei Koreshkov is coming off of an interesting past 2 years. In 2015 he beat current welterweight champion Douglas Lima via a dominant unanimous decision in order to win the welterweight title. He returned in 2016 and beat former UFC lightweight champion Benson Henderson via another dominant beatdown. It seemed like Koreshkov was going to be the champion for a very long time, making elite fighters look like they had no business being in the cage with him. Koreshkov's world came crashing down one night in Israel. The Russian was beating Douglas Lima in a rematch. He was up 2018 on the scorecards, and it seemed like he was going to walk away with another successful title defense. Koreshkov forced Lima's back against the fence and started winging punches at him. Lima started to do the same as he looked to get off the fence, and then it happened. A huge left hook caught Koreshkov on the chin and it was lights out. Lima was once again champion, and Koreshkov's reign was cut short. What was next for Koreshkov after losing the title? Perhaps a move to middleweight. Bellator's middleweight division has fewer contenders than the welterweight division and could promise a quicker path to the title for the Russian. Koreshkov is a big welterweight, standing at 61. He certainly wouldn't be small in the higher weight class. Speaking to MMA Latest, Koreshkov was quick to shut down the idea of moving up. No, I work hard at welterweight and I'd like to stay there. Sticking with welterweight, Koreshkov knew it was going to be tough to get another title shot after his fight with Chidi Njokuani, but he seems to know the key to fighting for the title. It's not about how many wins, but rather, the quality of my wins. With that in mind, he promised the game plan against Njokuani was to stand and bang. Koreshkov fulfilled his promise. Against Njokuani he came out guns blazing, giving Njokuani all he could handle on the feet before eventually taking him down and finishing him with some nasty ground and pound. Koreshkov also got the chance to explain who he'd like to fight next, should he not get a title shot. "I don't have any favorites. I know that there are a lot of tough fights at my weight class, but if I had to choose, I would say Rory MacDonald." Unfortunately for Koreshkov, MacDonald is booked against his former opponent Douglas Lima, as the two are set to fight for the Bellator welterweight title in January. A fight against MacDonald would promise fireworks, as the two are known for their ruthless style. There's a strong chance Koreshkov may get his chance against MacDonald next, as the former champion is certainly either next in line for the shot, or set to fight the loser. For those that are unaware, Michael Venom Page will make his boxing debut at the Indigo O2 next Friday, in London, on the 20th of October 2017. He will fight under Haymaker Promotions, the promotion operated and spearheaded by former WBA heavyweight and cruiserweight champion David Haye. Page will compete at super middleweight. It is an interesting career move for Bellator's undefeated welterweight. With 12 consecutive wins, and everything going perfect, nobody would have foreseen a career change coming, especially when a fight with Paul Daly seemed inevitable at the time. But the best like a challenge, and nobody can knock MVP for that. In MMA, Page was a hands-down kickboxer with extraordinary athleticism and technique. His movement was sensational and his ability to control the octagon was also impressive. His striking versatility is phenomenal. Kicks are a huge part of Page's game. Who could forget that brutal flying knee to Cyborg that sent the MMA community into shock after images emerged of his battered skull? But it remains to be seen how Page will cope without one of the main weapons in his arsenal. However, Page clearly has transferable skills he can take with him into the boxing world. His speed, movement and power will all make him successful in boxing. But he will obviously have to touch upon his defensive skills, as his hands-down styles may cause problems in boxing even with his good head movement. Conor McGregor has a similar style in MMA that didn't quite work in boxing, as he was open to too many shots. Even if the caliber of opponent is different, it may be worth analyzing what went wrong for McGregor against Mayweather Jr. and putting into practice a more complete MMA boxing hybrid that will allow MVP to succeed on the night. Page was on commentary for BBC Radio 5 Live that night, so perhaps he has. Something McGregor failed to do was prepare for a 36-minute fight rather than a 25-minute fight, but MVP is looking to learn from his mistakes. In an interview with BBC Newsbeat, Page spoke about the differences between MMA and boxing, including differences required for each sport. MVP seems to be aware of the need to change up his normal routines. An example I always like to give is a sprinter turning into a long-distance runner. They're using exactly the same muscles, but they're using them in a different way. BBC, although he may not be the most experienced in the ring, Page has certainly sparred some high-level guys such as Chisora, Gall and Eubank Jr., which can only help someone looking to change from MMA to boxing. It will be interesting to see how the latest MMA to boxing experiment goes. Will MVP struggle and return to Bellator to fulfill the rest of his contract, or will MVP kickstart his boxing career with a win on the 20th of October? He has the tools and the talent to succeed, but we will find out next Friday. It's no secret Bellator has a stacked welterweight division that could easily rival the UFC's. Bellator's welterweight division has many big names at the top and quite a few fighters who could easily become champion. Part of the reason the weight class is so good has been in large part due to Bellator's use of free agency. In free agency alone they have signed Lorenz Larkin, Paul Daly, Rory McDonald, and many more. In this instance, we are going to take a look at 4 welterweights, who are currently free agents, that Bellator should sign, in order to deepen the division and create new matchups. Jake Shields. Yes, the unofficial third Diaz brother, Jake Shields has been in the MMA game for a very long time, beating opponents with his smothering jiu-jitsu and Diaz brother mentality. Shields is known for having the best BJJ in MMA and has been putting his skills to the test in grappling matches, beating the likes of Lyoto Machida and Dylan Donies. The UFC veteran was released from WSOF a few months ago when they announced they were heading into a different path as a company. Bellator would be wise to snap him up, as he holds wins over the likes of Tyron Woodley and current Bellator knockout artist Paul Daly. The name remains recognizable to fans worldwide due to his big fights in the UFC and of course, due to his training with the Diaz brothers. Shields would add a known name to any card as well as a familiar face for even casual fans. Mehdi Baghdad. Two-time The Ultimate Fighter veteran, 22 and 25, Mehdi Baghdad has had a tough career the past few years. He was cut from the UFC after being forced to pull out of a fight due to injury, and after going down 0-2 in the promotion, the UFC didn't feel he was worth keeping around. Baghdad is an excellent striker who enjoys competing in slugfests. The Frenchman moved up to 170 for TUF 25 and has since said that he felt more comfortable at that weight class. He remains a name fans have come to recognize and can help Bellator expand into Europe. The high-level striker would also double as a kickboxer for the promotion. Baghdad remains capable of standing with anyone on the feet and is never far away from an entertaining slugfest. Rick Story's been a while since MMA fans have heard the name. Rick Story hasn't fought since his UFC contract ran out after his fight at UFC 202 against Donald Cerrone. Story has been out for over a year, mostly due to injuries, and has been training to become a firefighter in the meantime. Story is known as your typical wrestler who can beat anyone on any given night. The fighter had been on a 3-fight win streak before dropping a TKO to Cerrone. As mentioned before, Story remains a big name in the MMA world and is still known as a world-class fighter. It is very unlikely Story would want to return to the UFC given his comments in the past about how the company treated him. Bellator could book some fun matchups as well as add a known commodity to some of the smaller cards they promote in Europe. Eddie Gordon. Most fans might remember Eddie Gordon as the man who was head-kicked into another dimension by the late Josh Salmon. Gordon competed twice on Tough 19 and 25 and proved himself to be a strong wrestler with knockout power. Gordon remains a high-level fighter capable of putting on a show against anyone. The name remains known, and the skills are there as well. Gordon competed in the UFC at middleweight where he knocked out Diego Lima to win Tough. Unfortunately, he ended up dropping his next 3 fights before being released from the UFC. Gordon ended up being eliminated in the first round on Tough 25 by a rear naked choke from Tom Gallicchio. Gordon would not get a UFC contract as a result. Currently, he has been in talks with a few promotions, including Bellator, over a potential next fight.